Renegades, hello, I am Danny Lee OGT. I am Greg's partner, and I wanted to speak to you all. Um, so, just to be blunt, as REN is, I just didn't really resonate with the music. We have always advocated mental health. I'm terminal. I've had all kinds of operations. I can't breathe. I have no teeth, and 14% lung function. And I still try to put out guitar covers and make art, and now we do music reactions. So it's hard for me to talk. It's hard for people to hear me. Fun fact: you can pull up any of our videos and turn the transcripts on, and you will laugh forever because it has no idea what I'm saying. And it's rather comical. I don't mind laughing at myself. It helps. So people can laugh at me instead of someone laughing at them or whatever it takes. But so I was under the impression, and I was definitely wrong. We have a sub here that I'm going to bring in a minute who's a huge REN fan, and informed me that REN is not playing a character in a hospital. So I have major mental health too, but I don't have I don't want to use those nasty words. I don't have a cognitive mental health. I have emotional mental health, and I'm a huge Tool fan. I mean, Corn. I mean, got a penis on my arm. So anyway, I'm going to go through the chapters of REN talking about his story because I ate some mushrooms, I ain't gonna lie, and I had a realization that REN's mental health and my mental health are two different things. So with that being said, let's get into it. And it's nice to meet all of you. I adore the attention you gave Greg. OGL is my partner. We are total opposites. It'd be easier for me to list the drugs I have not done than the drugs I have, whereas Greg has never done drugs. Besides one cookie I gave him when he come here for my birthday in January, we went and sing Tool. And Tool is a very emotional band too, and has helped a lot of people, as does REN, just in different ways. So I probably still won't be sitting in on the reactions. I do love hip hop. I mean, and the sub here just played me a song. Well, let's bring her in because I don't remember the name of the song. What was the name of that song?
Losing It.
Okay, so I did like that pretty good. I'll bring it right back. So I just wanted to, admit when I see something wrong because I like to be objective no matter what, even if it's, well, basically before I started doing this instead of that all the time, I was very much engulfed by my ego and by arrogance, narcissism, and maybe half of it was subconscious, but it still was. So acknowledging it has been a big part of my change. I went to jail for a meth lab in 2015. I got out and I've changed my life. I still do drugs. My name's on the bottle. I'm not a hypocrite. There's still drugs. I just manage them better. And I eat a mushroom every now and then. So I don't condone the use of drugs, especially if you do have a chemical imbalance of any kind, especially schizophrenia. Psychedelics are very bad with that. Not a good mixture. So, with all that being said, I am, there's me and your favorite reactor, OGL. He lives in Indiana. I live in North Carolina. We met digitally. He was very much introverted, and me and him had a relationship where I talked and turned my camera on, and he was just say words. He typed for a long time, and then he turned his voice on one day and heard his voice, which is really weird because he types very slow but talks very fast. And then he turned his camera on, about a year ago, and now he's reacting on YouTube. So very proud of him. All right, let's get into this. All right, so yeah, Cosmic Vagabond Pixie. That's probably the only time I've ever said her name right. I like her language she uses. A lot of you have probably seen her in the comments of all the REN videos. You will notice it because she has her own language, and I love it. I'm trying to learn to speak it. Asterisk, blah blah blah, whatever. It's cool as hell. I had my computer read it one time. It's funny as shit. All right, so let's dive into chapter 1 with REN.
Hello everyone. This is the first time I've done something like this before. I wanted to write it down because there's a lot and I didn't want to miss anything. And some parts of this might be a little bit uncomfortable to listen to, but I wanted to stay as true as possible to the story, not miss anything, for the sake of people who might be going through something similar, or for the sake of people who don't, but want to help understand a little bit more. Yeah. I promise that everything in this story is 100% true. Nothing is exaggerated for dramatic effect. Some names I don't mention and some details I don't go too far into or downplay them for the sake of the people around me. Timelines might occasionally be a little bit off, but that's just because I've had to write everything from memory from a time that was quite hazy. I asked before embarking on this journey with me that you all respect the privacy of myself and the people around me.
Okay, I love that first of all, and she just informed me, so I got a little thing here where she could talk to me if she needs to. And he's not schizophrenic, and I knew that, but I do think he has mental disorder of some type, and maybe I think he was misdiagnosed. I know that much. The Cujo beat down, and I've watched Greg's reactions, and I get it. I do. I think Greg's better for Lyme disease. Okay, yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible, terrible, terrible. And especially being misdiagnosed, because I speak for myself and I question authority, as you'll see. And I'm not that keen on the institutions. I think they all need a reset. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, you will. The institutions like the religious, the political, the educational, and the pharmaceutical. They all need a reset. That's all I'll say about that. Because my mama told me not to say the shit if I wasn't. Well, yeah. If I had a bunch of fucked up shit to say, don't say it. I keep it to myself. So, all right, let's get back to it. By the way, I'm opposite than Greg. I don't have big words. I go with the feels. He's the wordsmith. I don't know. I'm different every day. So.
You might be compelled to reach out to some of the people that I mentioned, cast judgment, praise them, criticize them, and I ask you kindly not to. It's my choice to be in the public eye, and it's mine alone. This is the first time my story is on the public record in a concise way. Being in the public eye is strange. The more that I give to you, the less that I get to keep for myself. I don't find the experience of sharing particularly enjoyable. I don't so much like the questions that follow. And I'm not a medical expert, so I don't like to be seen as somebody with all the answers, because I don't have them. And because of the empathy that I feel, I'm compelled to try and help as many people as possible. But the last time I opened myself up to this on a one-on-one basis, I was surrounded by a lot of death. And there simply weren't enough hours in the day. So I ask you, if you need support, please reach out to a professional or use my music as your companion. I share my story in hopes that somebody who needs it finds it, that it provides hope, that it might ease the suffering for the people like me. I like my solitude, so I ask that anyone who respects the work I make and respects my contribution to the world to respect my solitude. A lot happened in my teenage years, and I didn't live the most normal of lives, but I'll save that story for another time. The important thing to contextualize this story is that I was full of life. I was full of a burning desire to change the world. The flaws in how we interact seemed obvious to me. I believed in people's power to change the unnecessary suffering we inflict upon ourselves. I was also enamored with music. Music is the closest thing to God that I have. It's a gateway to the unexplainable, and it's a way of communicating the inexpressible. There's just one moment I want to share with you from the years before I got sick. I was 17 and I felt indestructible. I'm not sure why, but my whole life I had this feeling inside myself that I was meant to do something important, not for myself, not for praise, not for personal gain, but something that would change the world for the better. It's hard to describe it without coming across like an egomaniac or having some sort of God complex, but I felt like I had some sort of divine purpose. And I remember feeling this so strongly that one afternoon after school, I stood in the centre of my bedroom and I spoke loud into an empty void. I said that I would single-handedly take on and defeat the forces of evil, and I welcomed them to try their best. Throughout the years, that memory stuck with me, taunting me sometimes. Flash forward to 2019. I remember the first day I knew something was wrong very well. I woke up in an unfamiliar room in Cardiff, feeling like a raven had perched itself upon my heart. Every time my heart beat, it's like some part of me was aware of the foreboding death sentence that was to come. Some sort of primal instinctive dread. Everything felt wrong, and I felt prosthetic, like I could tear my own skin off and observe though I was watching passively from another room. The night before, I'd been in Cardiff visiting friends in university. It was the end of summer, we'd gone out to a few bars. I wasn't really enjoying myself. That year I'd been struggling with social anxiety, perhaps from years of abusing my brain with a whole pick and mix and selection of party drugs. Engaging with society felt like stepping into the ring with a heavyweight champion. Every single fucking question felt like an oncoming haymaker I had to socially navigate because of my very limited toolkit of charisma at the time. I don't know why I cared about being liked so much, but the more I cared, the less equipped I became to have a simple human conversation.
I understand now why Greg's so good at reacting to this. There are parts of this that remind me of me, of what I've been through. But two people can go through the exact same thing. That don't mean they deal with it the same way. So I've never been one to, if someone's grieving, to say, oh, I know how you feel, because I don't. And it's human nature to want to say that when someone's grieving or whatever, or going through something. But if you'll just listen to them, people, and wait till they're not actively upset or going in an episode or grieving, and tell them later, I've had something similar happen to me, they'll appreciate it a lot more. And they won't think in their mind, shut the fuck up, you don't know how I feel, because that's how we all say it when someone tells us they know how we feel when we're upset. I feel like, anyway, that most people probably feel that way. So, yeah.
I used to deal with this by getting fucking hammered. That night was no exception. I got smashed, lost my phone, and woke up in a strange apartment. In the bed opposite mine was a snoring rugby player and his girlfriend. Everything just seemed off, and it wasn't a hangover. My first thought was I'd been spiked. I quietly gathered all my belongings and left before anyone could wake up and punch me with a conversation. I wandered around the grey Cardiff in a haze, feeling like I've just been rigged up to an IV bag full of ketamine and cyanide. And the whole world just seemed off, like I was looking at it through a tunnel. A heavy feeling of fear clung around me like a straitjacket. The only comforting thought was that with enough time, rest and water, it would pass. But it didn't. For 8 long years, it didn't. And this is my story of an 8-year-long nightmare. I returned back to my dad's home. He was living with his partner at the time. It wasn't my home, so I already felt uncomfortable and out of place.
Pixie, how old is REN and where's he from? You gotta unmute yourself. All right.
He's from Wales, and he's 33, I think, unless...
Basically, yeah.
I think he's 33. Unless he celebrated a birthday that I'm unaware of. Because I don't know his birthday, which is crazy.
So 8 years after he was 19, he said, I think, or 17. He said 2019.
19. He got bit 19.
So I won't kill y'all with Tool. I do most people, but Fear Inoculum was the last album they released, which is to inoculate your fears. I know that isn't easy for anyone to do, and it's probably impossible if you have a genetic, whatever, a defect in the DNA. whatever it may be. But fear has stopped everyone in the world. Anybody who's done anything that changed the world, when it gets the grain and stepped out of the line that everybody stands in, like sheep or the horde or the flock. The grass isn't always greener on the other side, but if you don't ever jump over the fence, you'll never fucking know. So I can only empathize with someone who can't break free of the fear. That would be, like he said, a living nightmare. So
these unusual symptoms persisted. I figured I'd caught some sort of virus and I'd get better with time. But by the end of the week, things were a lot worse. I took myself to the doctor and he said he thought it sounded viral, that if I went home and got enough rest, it would eventually pass. And it didn't. For 8 years, it didn't. I returned for my second year of university. My brain was full of fog and my body felt poisoned. There were intermittent days where I felt like a hollow suit of skin. I'd sit in lectures unable to focus and was devoid of any sort of personality. I'd be able to have basic conversations, yeses and nos, but I was stripped of the ability to think spontaneously. It's like my body was taking up so much processing power being sick that I could not have original or spontaneous thought. The most peculiar thing about this was there was a me that was aware that this was all happening and was observing it from outside of myself, locked out, screaming silently, banging on the walls of my mind to be let in, and never successfully. And nonetheless, there I was, like a ghost haunting myself.
wow. So I'm not gonna apologize like Greg. I keep telling you, don't apologize for it. So me and him have the opposite problem. My body won't function, but my mind's fine. And his body functions fine, but his mind can't. So yeah, I can empathize with that. Because I'm stuck inside my broken down fucking car with plenty of gas, and he has got a car that runs with no gas. That was a terrible analogy, but anyway, I guess you get the point.
My usual routine was getting home, running a shower and curling up into a ball to cry underneath the running water, not understanding what was going on. I brought myself to the doctors numerous times during this period, requesting every blood test they'd let me have, often being dismissed and told things like stress from university can cause strange symptoms. But how come no one I knew in university could relate to this? Eventually I was put on a 6-month-long waiting list to see a mental health specialist who did a short 1-page questionnaire and wrongly diagnosed me as hypercycling bipolar and put me on a course of citalopram. After a few weeks it stole my ability to sleep. I was told to stick it out and it would level out and eventually I'd feel more like myself. I stuck it out and I got worse and I pulled myself off it after 2 weeks in a row of sleepless nights and insomnia. There's something pretty peculiar about being told you're in some sort of spectrum of madness. Even if you suspect that you're mad, your diagnosis finds a way to claw itself into your identity even if it doesn't belong to you. Ever since I was a child, I'd always be asking what and why and how things worked. I couldn't really accept things as they were without knowing how. I carried into my adult years, and so as the bipolar hammer crashed and sentenced itself into my reality, I began searching online for behaviours associated with it, people's first-hand experiences, what it felt like to be manic. In these earlier days of my illness, the symptoms would fluctuate in severity day by day. Some days I'd be in a thick, tired fog, and other days they'd be more merciful. I began to associate the days of not suffering as mania and would act more erratically on the days that my symptoms were less bothersome. I did things like climbing out of windows of a 6-story student accommodation or get so drunk I'd wake up outside of the university campus lawn. But it wasn't mania. I just wasn't hurting. I spent 1 day a week with my therapist, who was teaching me cognitive behavioural therapy. The issue was, mentally reframing unexplainable symptoms caused a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. I was told my anxiety or depression was causing my symptoms, but in reality it was my symptoms which were making me anxious and depressed. So I was in some sort of inescapable bind. I'd devotedly work on my mental health, following every new tool for coping to the letter, only to have my symptoms get worse, which made me frustrated, raise the intensity of my treatment, only to get even more frustrated as my body seemed to deteriorate. After 6 months, I told my mum I'd happily saw off my own leg with a blunt knife if it meant my symptoms would vanish.
So she informed me that his body doesn't function properly, and he'll tell us that in a little bit. And yeah, I didn't mean nothing by that. Um, my breathing's good some days, and uh, the body issue has nothing to do with my mental health. But my sickness isn't causing my mental health. My mental health is from friends who have passed and me being locked in my head and not being able to get out. And music is, like REN says, one of the greatest conduits to get me out of my head. And sometimes I don't want to leave, and I'm triple extroverted. I have no problem talking to anybody. I talk to everybody I see. But when I'm in my head, I don't want to. So I try to distance myself from people. And coming out of the open now and talking about mental health all the time and telling the truth has pushed so many people in my family away, and friends and everybody, because they want to have small talk when I want to talk about real things that matter. And I've had friends now through this channel who are across seas and have stuff sent to me. I'm very humbled. I've also had them die, and I've also had to talk to people about things, and they end up taking their life. So it's my one of my best friends hung himself on my birthday, and I know he didn't know it was my birthday. It was just synchronicity or whatever you want to call it. And 2 years removed, my father passed away on my birthday. So, and the love of my life passed away on Christmas. And 2 more girlfriends have passed away. So 3 of them are gone. And yeah, I know we've all lost people, and I'm not comparing myself to him. I am only merely explaining why I think Greg is the right person to react to REN. But I'm going to go through all the chapters. Unless you, if you guys don't enjoy this, just tell me. I don't take it personal. So.
And I meant it. I told her if I had to live with this strange feeling for 1 more year, I'd kill myself. And I meant that too. But something happened that winter which showed me firsthand the horrors and the fallout from suicide. I met Joe when I was 9 years old. I remember the first time clearly. I was standing in his living room when he turned to me and he was like, "Watch this." Then he proceeded to climb on top of his sofa and did a front flip onto a stone living room floor. He landed on his back and lay motionless for a few seconds before grinning, getting up, and then doing it all over again. We grew up terrorising the streets of the small village we grew up in, playing knock door run or breaking into people's gardens to play on their trampolines. We stayed friends throughout high school, going through various phases together. Joe was comedian of the group. I remember countless mornings after messy all-nighters, Joe would be cracking endless jokes like a professional stand-up routine, and we'd all be in tears laughing. When I started writing my first songs, Joe and Sega were the first people who always knew every word, and they would sing along at the top of their lungs. They gave me a lot of self-belief, and they helped me build the foundation of what I do today, and I owe them a lot for that. That Christmas, I came back home to Wales from university. On Christmas Eve, me and Joe were sat in a pub, and he turned to me, and he told me that he'd fantasized about walking into the sea until he was totally submerged. He had a pretty morbid sense of humour, so I didn't really take him as seriously as I should have. 2 days later, it's 3 a.m, and I get a phone call. It's my friend Ella. She tells me that Joe is on the bridge by my house. He was drunk, he'd called her up, and he told her he was going to jump. I was still half asleep. I fumbled, pulling on whatever clothes I could that were near, and I walked out of the front door, and the winter air stung my face, and it woke me up. Adrenaline kicked in, and I started sprinting towards the bridge. It was about a 5-minute walk, a 2.5-minute sprint. As I was running, I dialed Joe's number, and I get a busy tone, and I felt relief, because it meant he was still alive. I kept hitting redial as I ran, and as I got about halfway to the bridge, the busy tone changes. I get an automated voice note saying the number's out of service, and my heart sunk. I got to the suspension bridge that connects Anglesey to the mainland, and it usually looks very beautiful. I sprint up and down the bridge yelling Joe's name, and silence, and it's deafening. and I peer over the bridge into the blackness, and the bridge sits about 100 feet above the water. Hitting cold water at that height is like smashing into concrete, and the waters are notoriously dangerous because of the cross current. I hear nothing, no sounds, nothing. I run up and down the bridge about 2 times before I spot a figure at the end of it, and my heart jumps into my throat, and I run towards the figure, and it's my friend Ricky who's had the same call, and we both run around up and down the bridge and around the surrounding area looking for Joe. More of his friends eventually arrive, and there's nothing. I was about a minute too late. We spent the next week walking up and down beaches with flashlights, and when it's that dark, every other large rock starts to look like a washed up body. We plastered all the neighbouring towns in missing posters, contacting whoever we could, someone who might know something. We checked bank records to see if any money had been withdrawn since he went missing. There was CCTV footage of him walking onto the bridge, but there wasn't any of him coming off. But there were dead zones in the footage, so there was still a small chance he could be alive. I was sleeping about 3 hours a night, pretty determined that we'd still find him. For about 10 days we had nothing, and then suddenly a call comes through while we're all at my friend Miles's house having food. It's the police. A body had been found in the water by the bridge. We piled into my friend's car. I remember being in the back seat in floods of tears, repetitively punching the back of the passenger seat as we drove to the scene. As we pull up, I saw a lifeless body being zipped up into a green bag near a parked ambulance. Its skin was bloated by the seawater, and it wasn't Joe. Someone else decided to jump that day. Joe was never found. It's difficult to truly let go when you can't say goodbye. For months following, I held on to this fantasy that we'd get a call that he'd run away to some European town and he was happy and he was healthy. But that...
You can tell it's very hard for him to do this. Pixie knows I don't like talking about my health. I'll talk about my mental health, not the physical health. I was in the hospital for 3.5 months, and for a month and a half I couldn't talk. I had a board that I wrote on. And I asked where I used the bathroom at. They said, use it on yourself, we'll clean it. And I had tubes, every tube you can have. And I didn't want to end myself, but I knew in those days, hours, weeks, months, what it would feel like to be in that place. And I remember going through the woods and seeing Jeffrey's body hanging from the tree, and he had a note in his pocket. He told me, look man, cuss me, screw my ex-girlfriends, do whatever, but don't feel guilty for what I'm doing. He said, if anything, you helped me hang on longer than I probably would have. And I didn't go see him enough. He lived in a camper in another person's backyard with no power. But the note had some stuff to tell his family. Told me to listen to the song Don't Follow by Alice in Chains, which is basically a song telling people to live your life and don't follow me what I'm doing. So that song is a catalyst that has me here sitting here right now, because I went to reaction videos to get them to play it, to put the message out, and they did. Seb Duran, Venezuela, and then the Charismatic Voice, patrons to them now. And it's while I was in the hospital, I was out for 11 days, conscious before I came to, and my uncle had died. Like, he was fine when I went my wreck, and then he was dead and buried. So the not getting closure, his is even worse because they never found the body. Well, but he was conscious. So, I don't know, it's similar, but again, almost opposite. Everything about me and him are similar, but opposite. So that's, I ain't gonna say profound, I don't know what the fuck you call it, but it's understanding for me.
A call never came. The time during his inquest was also around the time I was struggling with the side effects of a new antidepressant. I remember sitting in the courtroom feeling like I was listening to the whole thing deep underwater. The judge felt the circumstances surrounding Joe's death didn't mean The judge felt that the circumstances surrounding Joe's death meant that the verdict was left open. It kind of stung even more to not have an official ruling of suicide. I remember going to visit his mum not long after and witnessing the aftermath of a mother grieving for her baby boy. The silence of his father, the tears of his mother. I decided that day that I'd have to wait until my illness killed me because I couldn't do it by choice. I couldn't put my family through that. Over the next 10 years, I returned to my hometown, only a handful of times following Joe's death. My last visit was in the summer of last year. I reconnected with Joe's parents and showed them a song that I'd written, simply entitled For Joe. We cried together, reminisced together, joked, and I'm proud to say that I gave Joe's mum enough money to afford a caravan she told me she'd been saving up for. That felt pretty good. We'd also do a fundraiser for the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who were integral for searching for Joe during that time, and we raised a pretty good amount of money too. Being able to give back in whatever small way I could felt good, and it felt right for all the years Joe had made us all laugh till it hurt. He was a solid person, just a little lost, as we all are sometimes. And I miss him. Life was about to take an even more unusual turn, and I was about to meet the first angel of this story. So stay tuned for that. It's hard to take off from the ground when your wings are cut. Your stomach burns when you're drinking from an empty cup. You know the entire ocean came from my tear ducts. I see the world through Fibonacci sequences and double Dutch. I guess there's some that's born lucky. There's some that's...
Pixie,
Tool. I know.
Yeah, to incorporate the Fibonacci sequence in the song Naturalis. And it's a beautiful connection if you think about it. Maynard was sodomized by a priest when he was young. And, it's been hard. He's very vulnerable and intuitive. He listens to that part of himself, and I think REN's intuition is what let him know that he wasn't going to find Joe. I know he had his hopes up, and there's probably a part in him that hoped. And yeah, yeah. Sometimes I wish the part of me that died when my girlfriend died had taken me with him.
It's not. I tried to cut away my bitterness. Hatchet job. I locked my youth inside the trunk, inside the pickup truck, then dumped that whole thing over that same bridge the night you jumped. I think about that sometimes, vividly. What it felt like to look down and see tranquility. One sudden movement in a world of possibility. Only one movement to expose our fragility. I fucking miss you, and I miss myself. I miss thinking we were indestructible as hell. I miss chilling by the pier cave and kicking back with Callum, Hugo, Justin, Sega, Stevie and the fucking lads. I miss missing that. I numb myself to close the gap. I never even call them up. Distance is my plaster cast, to tell the truth. The day you jumped, my childhood jumped too. But I still can't find the anger. All I find is missing you, man, I miss you. with all my rhymes. I picture running 5 minutes quicker, I'm right on time. I picture pulling you back over the edge and then we're crying, and holding you, my brother, and telling you that it's fine. Not the way that it worked, I was late like a jerk. There's not a day where I can find a way to break from the hurt. Your body missing, so we never got to wave to the hearse. I hope you're listening, I love you man, I miss you absurd, fuck. Another domino, it falls across the way another's born. How you're supposed to raise a child and give it courage from a storm. In a world that is confusing, contradictions pave our flaws. Some will say we're only human, others judge us for our flaws. Some get born in sheets of satin, some get by in tattered clothes. Some will die before they live, that's just how the story goes. But for those of us still with us, who reside inside our hearts, tell them proudly how you feel. And for those of us who aren't, freckled angels stand strong, freckled angels live on, freckled angels climb higher, freckled angels still inspire, freckled angels won't forget you, teach me to live my life better. 13 years and still I miss you, now my wings are missing feather. Otherwise I'd come and join you, but for now I'm here on earth, stuck inside this mortal body, but for everything it's worth. Made me braver, made me wiser, made me stronger, made me true, made me face the world with courage, and that's all because of you. Freckled angels laugh the hardest, and their hearts, they are the largest. With their wings, they fly the farthest. So I know you're gonna be okay. Freckled angels live the longest, and their minds, they are the strongest. Oh, their friends, they are the fondest. So I know you're gonna be okay.
Ren feels guilty because he didn't get there before his friend jumped. Again, this is can't believe it because okay, me and my girlfriend had an argument, and I went and slept at a friend's house, and I went to work an hour after she did, so she had to be at work at 7, and I had to be at work at like 8, but so at 6:51 I seen the phone ringing, and it was her, but I knew I was getting up at 7, so my lazy ass slept, and she left a voice message. When I got up, I checked it, and it was her singing her song, Patience, Guns N' Roses. And she's just like, I fucking love you, man. I'm fucking pissed off at you, but I love you. And the song's playing, and she's singing, and then it just cuts off. And so I got went to work. And about an hour after I got there, calls started coming in. And it was foggy that morning. She was trying to beat her record to get to work because she had an 18-wheeler that was stopped in the road. It was foggy and she didn't see it and died instantly. And they estimated it at 6:51. So she died while she was leaving that voice message. I feel guilty that I didn't wake up, answer the phone. Because maybe while she was singing, talking to me, she dropped the phone or whatever and tried to pick it up. I don't know. I just know, ironically, the phone was never found. I still have that message. It was on an answering machine tape. I eventually recorded the tape onto a phone, and I've never listened to it, but I have it. Joe and Tammy, rest in peace. But I don't think me or Ren, neither one, should feel guilty. But we always will, I assume. So Pixie, thank you for helping me. And I always say that for those of us like me who can talk about mental health, we should, because for those of them that can't, it makes their days, it makes their life more of a hell for those of us that can, that won't. And we should help our brothers. We are not all islands. The water connects us, even if we're a long way away and we feel alone. We're all part of the same choir, singing the same song. So mental health is real. Be a part of the start. I believe in God. I don't believe in religion. I think all religions are talking about the same God. Why would they fight and have wars over this shit is beyond me. I don't understand it. I never have. I mean, I think God could come up with a better plan than to write a bunch of fucking books, spread them out across the land. I think God's more than we can fathom. I think the divine spark is within us all. It's called intuition. It's called that gut feeling that we all have, no matter what language we speak, no matter where we live. I could go into a lot more on that, but I think me and Ren may see differently on that. Or maybe he's using angels as a metaphor. I don't know. It's not for me to judge. But, yeah. I feel comfortable in the cemetery. My dad, all three girlfriends, my uncle that died, my nephew who died at 18 years old, they're all there. And my family all thinks I'm crazy for spending a lot of time there, or listening to sad songs, or dark songs like remakes. But those songs have saved more lives than the fucking Red Cross, so, or whatever. That. And yeah, the pharmaceutical industry, they're the biggest dope dealers on earth, because your doctor is your dealer. Big pharma are the peddlers. I mean, your doctor, I said this once, your doctor is the dealer, and big pharma is the suppliers. There was another link in the chain. I can't tell, I'm a little upset, but agnostic, but spiritual, yeah, same thing. It's hard for people to grasp the fact that you can be in touch with God, or whatever it is. I only want to call it a he, because it's chauvinistic as fuck. And I don't hate the people in church, but I despise the institutions. I don't hate my government. I don't hate my soldiers, but I can't stand the war pigs that send them over to die for fucking heroin, or whatever their agenda is. I think those people could burn in hell, but I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in the devil. I believe that God was smart enough to make evil to make us understand good. Without evil, this would be an emotionless planet. We'd be robots. Or paranoid androids, like your Radiohead song. So, much love, y'all. Renegades. Thank you for being so good to OGL. He won't mind telling you these things, because we are very open. The same guys you see on screen are the same guys that are off screen. Don't change one bit. The only thing that changes, I might not comb my fucking hair or something. Because it's, rather hawky. My onion hawk is what I call it.
And that's why I love you guys. Because you're real.
Thank you, Pixie.
Hmm?
And, yeah. Much love to you all. And how many chapters is there?
There are 8 chapters.
One down, 7 to go.
Yeah.
But there won't be this long part of me telling my story and the rest of them. Actually, I don't ever tell that. I don't ever tell this story. So this is not normal. It's normal for me to talk about mental health, and I listen to other people's stories. And sometimes it is harder to go to someone else's dark space than yours. Long story short, I had a couple in Australia who was both talking to me separately, and they both wanted to tell each other the same thing, but they were holding back. But they promised me, both of them, I promised them I wouldn't say nothing, and I didn't. And they started getting better. And then all of a sudden, one day, the man walked in with his wife and kid. He looked at her and said, "Fuck you, bitch," and he blew his brains out. And the kid had to call 911 because the mother had brain matter in her eyes. And then talked to her for a while, and then she ended up ending herself too. So that has been really hard on me. And but if I can help anybody, I'll keep going through those. And it's not for pity. Pity's okay. Everybody needs a little sympathy. But too much of anything can be toxic, and I get way too much of it. Everybody sees me. Am I okay? Can I call a doctor? They're doing the right thing. But in my head, I think, leave me the fuck alone. Let me pump my gas. Let me wash my car without everybody asking if I'm okay. It sucks. I made a song against my government, and I will fucking promote that. If you go to our page, it's right there on the title page. It's called Look Both Ways, because I think the American government acts like two dysfunctional parents fighting in front of the kids, and then they wonder why the fuck this country's fucked up. Well, maybe it's because the leaders of it act like fucking children. Anyway, I got off subject. Yeah, much love, everybody. And thank you, Pixie, and we'll see you at part 2. Lee OGT. Howdy.